Cool. Welcome back, everybody, to season 2 of Not From Boston. I know we took a couple of weeks off there, and as you can see, things are a little different. Uh, as always, we got some housekeeping we got to go over, and let's just get right into it. So, first things first. As like with any content creator, it takes a while for your content to actually become your job. And if you've read today's Not From Boston newsletter on Substack, which you're all obviously subscribed to, uh, you've heard this spiel. Writing that newsletter, doing this show, both are a ton of fun. But, you know, the priority always has to be work, has to be jobs, money, paying rent. Hopefully one day this can do those things. But, right now, it is what it is. So with that in mind, the first big piece of housekeeping is scheduling. This show is going to move to a bi-weekly basis, which, for those of you wondering, I mean every other week. I'm definitely not, I don't have time to do 2 of these a week. But yeah, that's, I think, the best way in terms of managing the workload of the show and school and, my job, without compromising on the quality of what Not From Boston is. The second, my co-host, Harry. You guys know Harry. He is an incredibly gifted musician. If you didn't already know that. He's working on, some music right now with people, and the music that they're making is fantastic. I've been lucky enough to hear some of it. And it's really cool. I'm really looking forward to all of you getting a chance to hear it. But, with any new project comes new commitments and obligations, and that's where Harry's focus needs to be. So he'll come back to Not From Boston from time to time because, believe me, he has some thoughts about this team. But he's got to do what's best for him, and I can't, I wish him all the, luck, and, he and I are talking literally every day about the Sox and all of this, so he'll be back, of course. But you're stuck with me for now, and as you can see, we have a new home. We're in Studio A, in the Annenberg Media Center at USC, which is also, Media Center is also where I work as a news editor and a baseball editor because, I contain multitudes. So with these changes, it's, an opportunity to reinvent all things Not From Boston. This show, the newsletter, etc. I've been really racking my brain for the last few weeks, which is why there's been no new content, trying to figure out what that reinvention looks like. I will say that the state of the world has definitely weighed on that process. The news has been very dark and incredibly scary. There are moments where it feels, kind of suffocating. And it's time like these where these kind of communities matter most. This is where a moment where, like, the value of sports, what sports brings to community building, it's where this is at its most important. We need opportunities to come together and share in something positive and meaningful, to remind ourselves that life is, worth living. So I've said before, in fact, I said it seconds ago, that sports are one of the best community building tools we have left. And so many of my core memories are baseball centric, and I want to share or emulate that joy with you. The show's format is still evolving, so some episodes will just be me. Some will have a guest, and some will have a panel of guests. Some might be even different than those 3 things. There will be a lot of kinks to work out, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. And then, yeah, for those of you, like I said, for those of you who watch Not From Boston when we've been recording Zoom calls, like, congratulations, you're rewarded for your viewership. And finally, Not From Boston is on Patreon. The link will be included with all other social media stuff at the end of the show. Um, and it is, you know, I think the goal is to phase Substack out as the platform hosting the podcast. The newsletter will still exist, and we're going to try and move that over to Patreon. So I encourage you to become a member there and follow the show there. But for now, if you'd rather stay on Substack, absolutely keep up with it. Membership on Patreon is free, but if you feel so inclined, there are 3 paid subscriber tiers for literally as little as $1 a month and no more than $10 a month. You can invest in this show and the mission of community building through a love of the Red Sox and of baseball. You don't get any perks for giving me money, but if you feel like giving $5 a month to help sustain this show, that'd be really cool. Anywho, we should talk about some baseball. We're gonna have a great guest today. His name is also Harry Kaplan, a big Red Sox fan, also a very good experience as a scout and an analyst. So we're gonna just talk about how the Sox look coming into 2026. But before we get into that, there's just, there is some other baseball news that I want to kind of unpack. Again, some of it will be from, you will see on the newsletter if you're a reader, but this is, I think, I wanted to kind of dig in here. So as some of you may know, the collective bargaining agreement between the Major League Baseball Players Association, the Players Union, and Major League Baseball is going to expire on December 1st. Many think that it will likely lead to a lockout imposed by the owners and the league, which could in turn lead to a strike and loss of games in 2027, which would be mind-numbingly stupid. Recently, in this past, I think week or two, we learned that MLB Players Association President Tony Clark resigned, which was kind of shocking, especially given that the negotiations for this contract are going to be coming soon. Resigned. He resigned because he was having an affair with someone he employed at the union. That someone happened to be his sister-in-law. Now, I know what you're thinking. Brother's wife or wife's sister? And if your first thought after that is, well, which one is worse? Congratulations, you're going to hell. I actually don't remember. I've looked it up several times and I keep forgetting which sister-in-law. It doesn't really matter. The dude's out. But that's kind of okay because the guy coming in, Bruce Meyer, is, I would say he's a stronger labor advocate than Clark, honestly. He's a better negotiator. I think this is a good thing overall. But since we're talking about the union and the league, there's so much conversation around that has to do with the kind of central issue with your salary cap, which is, I guess, the pay gap, the salary gap between these teams. Because you have teams like the Dodgers who are spending $400 million a year, and you have teams like the Marlins who are not even spending $100 and are not competitive. And so there have been cries for a luxury tax. I mean, not for a luxury tax, for a salary cap for years. That's part of why there was a baseball strike in 1994. And right now there are also a lot of cries for a salary floor that, let's not cap the rich teams that are spending. Let's set a floor so that the teams that are cheap can't be cheap. They have to spend more money. I think a lot of people don't realize that a cap comes with a floor. I also don't think a lot of people realize that a cap and a floor are both terrible ideas. And that, not that we shouldn't fix this issue, because there is a real payroll disparity in baseball that should be addressed. I don't think it's with a floor or a cap. I'm going to kind of explain why here. So, I forgot that I had slides that said some housekeeping. But first, everybody's wrong about the salary cap. So, basically, what I think instead, and I got to preface this at the beginning, I'm not an econ guy or a business guy. I'm a guy with a lot of time and really good at ADHD hyperfixating. So what we currently have We currently have what is called a competitive balance tax or a luxury tax for teams that spend above a certain amount of money. So this is a chart that kind of illustrates basically you spend less than $20 million over the base tax rate, and it's your first time, you'll pay a 20% tax on all that money over budget. And if it's your third time or your fourth time and you're over $40, and I think they actually now have a tier for over $60 over what is called the competitive balance tax threshold, which is like the amount, the payroll amount, the line in the sand, you'll pay a 95% or 110% tax on those dollars. So that's like, that is basically a soft salary cap. It's a very soft salary cap, but it is still a disincentive to spend. In terms of teams exceeding the luxury tax threshold, you can see there are a lot more than there used to be. This chart from left field perspective is great. You can see that I very sloppily added on the 2024 or 2025 teams. But you can see that a lot of the teams that owe luxury tax make the playoffs, if not win the World Series or win a league championship. And why is my phone? Who's giving me notifications? Okay, great. But so the incentive seems to be kind of wearing out. There are, I think, a lot of solutions to be had to discuss about this. Probably an extra set of penalties for teams that go over it 4 or 5 years in a row, instead of just 3 to infinity. Maybe the percentages need to be, maybe the taxes need to be higher for their first. I don't know, but I think fixing what happens to teams that spend too much is not as important. What's weird about the luxury tax is that if it's a soft salary cap, it's missing a soft salary floor, which a lot of people I don't think understand that a salary cap requires a salary floor. The NFL and the NBA both have salary floors in addition to their caps. So does the NHL. So let's look at 2024 because we actually don't know. We're going to stick with 2024 because we don't actually know the revenues from 2025, and the revenue does actually play a role here. You can see that these are the 10 teams that spent the least in 2024, and you can see how they did. And only 3 of these teams made the playoffs. So this leads me to revenue sharing. Basically, at the end of every season, every MLB team pools, all the MLB teams pool 48% of their revenues into one big pot, which is then divided evenly amongst all 30 teams. Teams like the Dodgers put more into the revenue sharing pool, than they receive, and the Pirates put in less than they get. This is to help keep the teams in smaller markets financially afloat. In 2024, MLB's revenue sharing pool was worth roughly $5.8 billion. So each team received a share a little over 190 million, with 3.3% of the pool. That means some teams are receiving more money through revenue sharing than they're actually spending on payroll. So my proposal: teams can only receive their full revenue share if they either have a payroll greater than or equal to the median payroll that year, which in 2024 was 150 million, or they make the playoffs. So how would this system work? Basically, if your team doesn't spend enough money, they don't get their full share, unless they make the playoffs. You have these different ranges, kind of in the same way that with the luxury tax. And you'll see that each consecutive time you spend that little, you lose a certain percentage of revenue share. And so if you spent less than $75 million a year, and it's your third straight year of doing that, you're getting 0.25% in terms of revenue share instead of the 3.3% that you would get normally. So what does this mean in terms of actual money? You'll see that the Athletics, who spent $83.9 million in 2024, would have only received 1.5% of in revenue share instead of 3.3. So they would have only received $116 million. You would see the Guardians here still they got more, and the Brewers both got more than 190 million. We'll get to that in a second. So wait, yes, this is a great question. What about the rich teams? Because under this new structure, any team, basically all these small market teams that are not paying enough money, are not spending enough money, who cry poor even though they're not, would get to actually cry poor because we'd be literally taking money from them. And rich teams would continue to get richer because the rest of the money that isn't spent in revenue sharing would be redistributed amongst those teams that aren't cheap. That doesn't seem fair. So, under this new structure, any team that pays a luxury tax will be limited to a 3.3% share of revenue sharing, just like they would have in the current system where it's divided evenly between all 30 teams. So you don't get any more money if you go over the tax, but you don't lose any money. So we're not penalizing you for spending money, but we're also not rewarding you. So they're capped at 3.3%. The teams that don't spend enough lose a chunk of their revenue share. So that money is all getting redistributed to the teams that didn't spend too much or spend too little. What happens to them? So let's take a look at an alternate 1984. An alternate 2024. If you can see from here, the teams in blue, which includes the Blue Jays, Diamondbacks, the Red Sox, Cardinals, Angels, Rockies, Mariners, and Brewers, and Brewers and Guardians both made the playoffs last year despite spending not enough money. They're all getting $216.97 million in revenue sharing, which is actually like $20 million more roughly than what they were going to get in the old system. So we're actually, these middle of the pack teams that both either are competitive and miss the playoffs or make the playoffs and don't spend enough money, they're actually getting rewarded and incentivized to spend more and continue to do what they're doing. And this is because I think for me, the underlying flaw in a salary floor is that I don't need teams to all be spending the same amount of money. That's boring. It's really fun to watch an underdog who doesn't, the whole Moneyball story is like interesting, not because of the analytics, but because it's an underdog story. It's a quote unquote poor team, breaking out and being better than rich teams until they lose in the ALDS. So I truthfully, like with the Guardians, like people are like, oh, the Guardians are cheap. I don't care. The Guardians are winning. That's the point. The Guardians snuck up last year and won their division in 2025. I don't care that they're have one of the lowest payrolls in the league. I don't care. If they're winning, if they're competitive, if they're bringing fans to the ballpark, like that's what you want. If you're winning games, that is the goal. It's not, so in that respect, I'm like, I don't need to ever be spending like the Dodgers, because that's also an economic catastrophe in its own way. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Basically what I'm saying is we have to, I think baseball fans, are really smart. We got to get a little smarter. I think the media people who are like just talking about like, oh, yep, there's going to be a strike. Oh, yep, there's going to be a lockout. Oh, yep, we're doomed. Oh, yep, there's going to be a salary cap, are not helping, because if you put that out into the world, that is what the world is going to do. We're going to listen to it like it's a certainty and say, oh, yep, everyone's saying that it's a certainty there's going to be a strike, so there's going to be a strike. This is avoidable completely. I think a system that incentivizes performance, by telling teams, hey, we are going to dock some of your revenue sharing if you consistently don't perform. But if you, don't want to spend that money or can't, you have to perform. And we will reward you for that performance. Like, I agree with Trevor May, whose content is great, and you should watch it after you finish this. He talks about how, the financial incentives aren't enough anymore, or financial disincentives, because teams are, they're like, okay, fine, we'll just pay the fines. That's what the Dodgers are doing. So I think you have to move beyond those kind of incentives and move more toward, these kind of both on the field and like, you can work in draft picks, but these on the field incentives. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, you don't want to, you can't afford Kansas City. Kansas City can't afford to spend the money like the Dodgers do. There's no world in which they can. Great. You also don't have to spend so little, but if you're going to, make sure that the product on the field competes. Make sure that team is winning 85, 89, 90, 92 games, on a $100 million payroll. Like, build that farm system, make those smart trades, but do your best to compete. And that's really, I think that's That's all I want. I mean, I understand fans. I mean, of course, like the Red Sox have their own, you know, bullshit history with this stuff, but like obviously with the A's, for example, where you build up all of these prospects like Chapman and Semien, and then the organization immediately moves them out, trades them away as they're approaching free agency to avoid paying them these salaries. Like that is a problem. Hopefully, a system like the one I've described like deters that, but um, I think if the Oakland A's were competitive after Donaldson and Semien left, instead of kind of folding into the rebuild that they did, I would be like, yeah, that's what, that's their prerogative. Like it sucks, I think, for fans on a different level, but um, maybe it also wouldn't because the team would still be good. I think that's really kind of what I'm saying. It's like you have to avoid teams have to avoid these periods where they're like, oh, we're gonna suck for a little bit. We're not gonna, they're not calling it tanking, but it's still tanking. Uh, I've been really rambling for a minute here, but in a bit we're gonna have Harry Kaplan on, and that's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna talk some socks. Uh, we'll be right back.
Cool.
All right, we're back. All right, with me, Harry Kaplan. He's a scout looking to work in baseball operations. Going to start working for a team in the Frontier League pretty soon. There's my camera. Still getting used to it. Harry, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Bennett?
I'm good. This is like, it's been a crazy week, so I'm enjoying like just talking about baseball. I literally before you came on, I was did a solid 30 on the luxury tax and
Oh, yeah.
salary cap stuff. It was nice to kind of talk about that to myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
there you go. I was watching Oviedo walk three guys and, not look great, but hey,
yeah, it's
hopefully we can
I used to put a lot of stock in spring training games. Now I'm like so happy that I just get the alerts.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
And you got games ending like 15-2 and you're like, oh, jeez. What?
yeah. So let's see. I was initially gonna kind of frame this conversation where we could talk about what the Sox did this offseason and end it on like a game where we build the what we think the batting order is going to be, because honestly it's kind of unclear, I feel like, to a lot of people. Now I'm thinking that might be the best way to start this conversation. So
Like
because
that. I was actually thinking about their batting order before this, and I kind of actually wrote down, my take on their batting order and reasons why, this should be the batting order going into game one. Because last year it felt like, it was like, when are we bringing up Campbell? Is he going to start right? When are we bringing up Roman Anthony? There was a lot of question marks going into last year, and I feel like this year things look a little more clear, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing.
yeah, I mean, oops, I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Last year it was like, oh, is Campbell making this roster? And now this year it's like, is there room on this roster for Campbell? Kind of, maybe not.
Hopefully, one of him or Tristan Casas hits because, I was a big fan of Casas. I thought that, we drafted
Recording
him
in progress.
26th overall, right? First round.
Yeah,
And, there was a lot of hype going into him, as a big lefty at Fenway, right? He could just flick balls the other way, use the monster. And, injuries caught up to him, had a, awful start. And it's really rare to see kind of Red Sox Nation kind of shit on him almost. And I'm a big Casas fan. Watching the Red Sox documentary on Netflix. You really start to like the guy, and he's an interesting character, and I'm rooting for him as well. But yeah, with him and Campbell, it's like where do they fit? Yeah,
yeah. I mean, them to start, honestly. With Casas, he's a guy who I think has a lot of potential. He has, I think, still a fairly high ceiling. I think that 2023 year was not an aberration. At this point I'm like, I it's like, you can't be healthy, man. Like I can't continue to like put a lot of like faith in you, or like put a lot of stock in Casas right now. But let's just jump right into it. So
for sure.
who is leading off for your Boston Red Sox?
Um, man, I mean, as a baseball coach, I try to get the best hitter, the most at bats. And, I think that we have enough boppers around Roman Anthony. So the answer is Roman Anthony, but I think we have enough hitters around him where, yeah, he has probably the most raw power on our team, maybe outside of Contreras, but I'd say Roman Anthony leading off for the 2026 Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, there was. I agree with that, like wholeheartedly. I think there was a minute there at the beginning of his time in the bigs where they weren't slotting him at the top of the order, and he wasn't doing great. And I think because he spent pretty much all of the minor leagues, hitting at the top of the order, that like, I think anything but that would be really disruptive to his, to his approach. And so I think it's like, yeah, you have to keep him where he's doing really well. So yeah, I agree. Lead
Oh, for
off,
sure.
100%. Um,
And I think to jump off of that, like with
yeah.
Roman Anthony, I think that, he played, limited season last year, but 1.8 WAR, I think it was F4. Um, the thing I want to see, like, I want to see him take a big jump with kind of his launch angle, right? He was hitting the ball into the ground a little too much and having that type of, exit velo, right?
Hmm.
It was only, I think it was him above Judge when it came to, the exit velo above, um, it was barrel and exit velo above, 60% when it came down to it. And I think that, Roman Anthony, elevating the ball, that's really where you're going to see his jump for sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to him. Hopefully, taking that big step, and all things considered, like that's, I think, where we're headed. Fingers crossed. Um, but yeah, I think if he can get that, yeah, if he can get the ball in the air a little more, there are a couple of guys in this lineup who I'm like, if you can elevate the ball off the barrel, we're gonna we're gonna be in better shape than people think we are. Where is Roman
Oh
Anthony
yeah.
playing?
Oof.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, you could you could you could DH him, right? But I think that you'll see him a lot in right field, right? When I think about him in right field, I think about that ball that went under his glove, like first or second game of his career. I think it was in New York. He was hearing it, but yeah, no, I think that his defense, can take a step up, and all it takes is experience for young guys, playing the corner outfield, playing in the outfield, just playing, MLB games, right? The game's a little faster, and I think a little more experience, you're going to start to see that defensive jump. But yeah, I'd go
Yeah.
right field and, mixing in some DH and letting guys like Yoshida, platoon and some other guys as well. But yeah, right field. What about you?
Uh, Left field. The fact that you mentioned both right field and
Left field.
Yoshida, I'm like, oh, cool. We're gonna get to that. This
Yeah,
outfield's a
no,
mess.
he worked off the monster late in the year. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's a good call.
yeah. I think that because I know he's played some center, but Rafaela is, it's Rafaela. But then I think behind him
Abreu's
it's
just
like
way, yeah,
Duran is somehow like a great, not great, like he's a very good center fielder, but like a very mediocre left fielder. So it's like, okay, Duran backs
yeah.
Rafaela up. Okay, who's sitting second?
Oof. I had two guys. It really came down to how I was mixing in Durbin, but I think I'm gonna go with Trevor Story. I think
Mm,
Trevor Story in the two hole, right, offers that. He had a great season last year, staying healthy for the first time in a while. And I think when you start with Roman Anthony, you really want that righty in Trevor Story that has some power and can use that monster. And you know, top of the order guys, right? You want him
mm.
stealing bases. What was it? Was it 30 in a row that he had last year? 32, something like that. But yeah,
He
you
was
want a
like,
guy that can steal bases, and then you get
yeah,
Duran,
not
right?
he wasn't caught
And
stealing. I
Trent.
think
So
once. I think he was like, I'm pretty sure he was
maybe
batting
he
a
was caught in the
thousand.
playoffs. Maybe that was what it was.
No, he there was. I mean, there was at least a run. I think, where uh, he was stealing uh like a lot of bases, and just like he was, yeah, he was caught stealing for the first time in September last year.
Wow.
He was 31 for
Yeah.
31
Yeah.
up until that point.
Wow.
I mean, that's
Unbelievable.
pretty awesome. Yeah.
It's like picking
Um,
your spots, right? Like
yeah.
it's impressive.
What do
at
you
that
think
level. Yeah.
of Breslow committing so early in the offseason to saying Story is our starting shortstop and not entertaining the move to second base?
I like it. I think that I mean, he's right up there with, you know, some of the best defensive shortstops in the game. I think that, the way he can make plays on the run, make plays in the hole, the jump throw is the big Trevor Story play that he's
Mm-hmm.
shown. He made a nice play during one of the spring games yesterday that, guy beat it out, but just an unbelievable athlete. And I think that having Story at shortstop, I mean, who else would you put there on our team right now? And I think Trevor Story can still, offer that elite defensive value at
Mm-hmm.
shortstop for the Red Sox. So yeah, no, I love it. I love that Breslow is, just kind of putting confidence in guys early and it's not like Story, needs that confidence right now. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it for sure.
Yeah, I think if I think an argument can be made for Marcelo Meyer being a starting shortstop and moving to Story to second if Meyer was healthier more often, or like had
Yeah.
if he had at this point completed a full major league season or a full minor league season, I think I feel more strongly about that. He's got to prove that he's reliable first. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's funny that like also Story was when he played second for base for the Sox in 22. Like he was the best second baseman that this team has had since Pedroia. So
Yeah.
I think he'd be good at either. I was at the game in Anaheim where he in 2024 where he dislocated his was it dislocating his shoulder or whatever he that
He dove in the hole on a backhand and
yeah
he landed on his shoulder. It
yeah
was
it
you
was
don't see a lot of injuries like that. There's nothing you can do.
I swear to God you could hear the pop like like you could and just then seeing him like because he was like kicking on the field like in pain and I mean the wind got sucked out of the ballpark that day like that was
Yeah. And he
um
started the season so hot. I
he
remember it was
did
early.
it
What
was
was it?
so sad it
April?
literally changed the tempo of that whole season honestly. Um,
Yeah.
all right, who's hitting in the three hole?
Whew. I think I'm gonna continue going left, right, left. So I'm gonna go with Duran. I don't know. A lot of the Sox fans, a lot of the Twitter fingers, whatever you want to call it, they were all about trading Duran, Jaron Duran is this, Jaron Duran is that. But at the end of the day, he has put up some great seasons when you look at, numbers don't lie, right? Like, yeah, sometimes he's hot, sometimes he's cold. I think Jaron Duran has been arguably the most valuable player for the Red Sox over the past 3 years. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Duran heats up at the right time, in September, going into October, in the last 3 years. I think that Jaron Duran in the three hole it makes the most sense right there. He can, I mean, remember that season he had 11 triples. I mean,
Yeah,
if you get that guy up in the three hole, I think that, we're looking good and he's consistent. So
yeah.
I'm gonna
I
go with
mean,
Duran.
again, like, excuse me. I agree about Duran. I really I think there was a window where he was hitting third last year where it was Roman, I think Bregman, and then him. And I think if he man, it'd be nice if he still had that kind of protection that he but him hitting third I thought was really like you
Oh,
could see it was nice to have that bat in a better position to drive guys in than we were getting with him in the leadoff spot. And I
yeah.
think he has the pop to do it. Like I know that like traditionally, 3, 4, 5, it's like that's where you're putting most of your power. And like that's not always true anymore, or I guess like it's not like kind of the same as it was, but Durant fit that spot very
It's not a
nicely.
two hole. It's like Shohei's hitting in the two hole,
Yeah,
leading off sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I will say with Durant, like I definitely I was on board with him or Abreu getting moved this offseason. Not just to move them, but like if there was a value for them. Um, Durant as a person, I have like very complicated feelings about because like obviously there was that whole slur incident in
yeah,
23 that was unacceptable. And then 24, he
100%.
had that, talking to the documentary being so vulnerable about, mental health and his, suicide
Yeah.
attempt. And that really resonated. So I think like he's a complicated guy, but like, you know, that aside, like, him as a player, like Durant as a player is, I think, one of the most, somehow he's one of the most underrated players in baseball right now.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't
And I
think,
think he's really
oh, sorry,
become a leader as well. Yeah.
yeah, I think I mean, he's had to. He's like grown into that. He's been with the team for like 5 years now. But I think, reading reports that Breslow and the front office were like trying to shop Duran on his 2024 year, and like that's the ceiling of the guy you're going to kind of get. Like that's, I guess coming to trade conversations, viewing that as the value of the player, um, I think was a little not really the right strategy. Not that he's not that guy anymore. I think he still had a very good 2025 and he had a great 2023. 2024 was just an insane. And I maybe replicable, but it's okay if it's not. It's okay if like 25 is kind of like a baseline of where he is. So I think he should be valued higher than a lot of other teams kind of look at Duran, but maybe not as high as the Red Sox think he should be.
No, I totally agree with that when you're talking about his 2024 year. I think that, being an 8-win player, right? I think that that defensive season that he put up was kind of an outlier. I think. I mean, he was making plays that, outs above average agreed with, but defensive run saved didn't. It's like I think what we saw in 23 and 25, somewhere in between that, give or take, is, the Durant you're gonna get. So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean when he's hot, he's still incredibly like it's an when he gets hot, it's amazing.
Oh
He
yeah.
becomes the best hitter on that team. I think I'm sure also part of the calculus for moving him around has to do with his age and his contract situation. I think he's this is will be after 26. It'll be his like third year of ARB, um,
Yeah.
and I think going into free agency he'll be 30, if I'm remembering correctly, or like 30 or 31, and like that's which is like I think that's still relatively young, but whatever. As someone who's approaching 30, you know,
Yeah. Especially for
um,
a speedy guy like that, it's tough to
yeah,
hang on to those wheels for so long. Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely true. I know that Cora has been pretty adamant that Contreras is the cleanup guy. Do you agree with that?
I do. I do agree with
Yeah,
that. I think that Contreras, he does give the Red Sox, you know, that pull happy, in a way, yeah, he, started off last year, meh, but he finished the year very strong. And I think just, giving him that confidence, just slotting him into the four hole really, resonates, almost as a player, right? Like you felt like, maybe when you were a player, like you you go to a new team and your coach, first game you've ever played, puts you in a three hole, you have that confidence. And I think
mm-hmm.
giving Contreras that confidence, I mean, he showed it. He's a righty that can, pull the ball and can launch it for power. And I think that putting him, in the four hole, he's shown it, with the Cardinals, that using that monster, I think is going to be, very, very, strong for him. So yeah, I'm going
Yeah,
to go with Contreras in the four hole.
yeah. I think early in the or toward the end of the season where it was like I think I had talked about it with Harry on a prior episode, um, where we were talking about first baseman, and we're of course we're talking about Alonso, we're talking about whoever, and I think like at the time I was like I don't know, like I feel like maybe like just go talk to the Cardinals about Contreras, and it was kind of like I think
You called.
yeah no, which I'm like Craig Breslow, call me, but I think yeah he makes a ton of sense for this team. Like I don't um we just like the value of having a competent first baseman defensively. Um,
Oh yeah.
like yeah, I would like having Pete Alonso, like having that pop in the lineup would be awesome. But I actually am so much happier that like we have a first baseman who I can like comfortably rely on to not make more errors than he should. Um,
Oh yeah.
like that
Oh
is
yeah.
has been such a mess for so long, and so I'm yeah thrilled about Contreras.
I was
Uh,
actually I was just talking with a friend about Contreras. The reason, I believe he's so good defensively is because he loves throwing the ball. Sometimes you get those first basemen who are kind of, let's field it and like, let's get it over there. But Contreras picks it up and he's firing. And I think, having that with, that Trevor Story double play combo, you're going to see a lot of double plays with Contreras and Story this year. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I
He made
love
the
it.
transition from catcher to first. I mean, I argued seamlessly,
Yeah,
which is great.
Yachty was blocking him a little, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's he
yeah. Which
really
I mean,
took
to be
that
fair,
on.
like yeah, it doesn't matter how good you are as a catcher. If like Yadi Molina's in your way, you're like, yeah, of course.
Oh yeah,
um,
I mean,
who's
for
who's
sure.
hitting fifth?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it going. Left, right, left, right. I'm gonna go Wilyer Abreu. I think
Yeah.
Wilyer Abreu in the 5 hole is perfect. He offers, that gap to gap, you know, that gap to gap power, but he can also, right, he can also, hit 20 to 25, even 30 bombs, during the year if, he heats up. So I think Wilyer Abreu, he gets on base. I think the fact that he plays, elite defense as well,
Hmm.
he's going to be, slotted in that 5th hole. And I think he's gonna thrive because you've seen, I mean, with Abreu, he can go on some hot streaks, and I think that keeping that lineup, right, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, is going to be very strong for Alex Cora, especially with
Hmm.
the pitching we have. We haven't even gotten into the pitching,
I
but
mean, oh my
I
god, yeah.
think finding, yeah, all right, we'll get into the pitching. I'd love to talk pitching, Red Sox pitching, but yeah, just kind of finding ways like that to kind of exploit the other team, right?
Hmm.
We win the game 4-3. You guys were talking about how that was boring, you and Harry. I was listening to one of your other podcasts, but hey, if we can find little ways like that, having,
Hmm.
righty lefty splits, right? That's just going to make it that much harder. And I think Abreu has that, pop behind Contreras that will lead into the 6, 7, 8, 9 guys.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I truthfully like. I think if he hadn't had the injuries he had this past year, he would have hit 30, at least.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that that's there. I have two questions about Abreu, and then I'm gonna find a way to kind of shorten the rest of the lineup. With Abreu, two things. One is so you mentioned Roman Anthony playing right. So where does Abreu play? And then my second question is, do you agree with Cora about letting Abreu hit lefties?
Okay. Um, let's answer the first one. First one, I'm gonna go back. I think Roman Anthony's gonna play left. Um, I think that's where he belongs. He's working off the wall. So I'm gonna have Willier and right. I'll switch that up right there for you. It's a good problem to have with all
Yeah.
the athletic outfielders we have. Um and yeah, I think, you know, obviously there's less lefties in the league. You're gonna face less lefties, but I think, having Abreu hit lefties from the start and just kind of getting him acclimated early is something that he should do. And numbers don't lie. If he's not doing well, right,
Mm-hmm.
maybe making that change and figuring something out. But um, yeah, I think starting it off with Abreu hitting lefties and getting him acclimated is something that Breslow and Cora should definitely do.
Yeah, I feel like Abreu has said a couple times in the spring training so far that um, hitting against lefties has been something he really prioritized in the offseason, and I'm hoping that translates. Uh, I think just kind of to end the conversation on the lineup, I think there's really only one or two other kind of questions. The first one being, um, who's playing second and third?
It's a good question. I'm gonna go with Durbin at second.
Interesting.
Durbin at second and Meyer at third. Even though I think Meyer can definitely play second, but he hasn't enough, and Durbin
Mm-hmm.
has. And I think Meyer has shown that, in limited time last year, he looked really good at third. And I
Yeah,
think that's where he's played for, a lot of his career. I think putting him
I
at
think
third to start the year is something we should do and having Durbin play second.
yeah, I think it's funny. I
I don't want
I
to see Rafael at second anymore. He's too good in center field. It actually pissed me off when I saw Rafael at second. You're wasting
yeah.
that elite value
I mean, if for
when
no other
he's
reason than his
a
bat evaporates when he plays second.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't understand it, but maybe
I
if we had Bregman, that would solve things. But
Oh my god, yeah. If we had Bregman,
I want to get
uh,
into that. But
yeah. Wait. So I kind of feel a little differently. I feel like, I in my mind, uh, Durbin at third, Meyer at second. The reason being, um, one is like kind of health and keeping Meyer as healthy as possible for the year. Um, but I think that kind of folds into the fact that, um, like I know that Cora wants a consistent middle of the like middle infield setup with Story. And I know that, they also Meyer does not hit lefties well, so I imagine, I don't know if it's with Monasterio to start the season because Romy Gonzalez is looking like he's heading for the IL, but and I
yeah.
normally I think like it's to me I'm like, oh, a Romy Meyer platoon at second is kind of the best case scenario. I don't Meyer, I
A
know
little
Romy.
IKF. You throw IKF in there a little too.
Yeah, that's a whole contract. I'm like, what? I like like I know defense first, but like, oof, man. Okay,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I agree with that.
So let's talk about pitching.
Awesome.
How I don't even know where to begin. Like our rotation. I guess let me start here. How do you feel about the fans and talking heads in baseball who were like the Red Sox should try to trade Brian Bayo?
I was just thinking about this. Um, uh, I don't know. I remember I was so excited about Bayo when we signed him to that team-friendly deal. All that, talk came out about Pedro mentoring him and, you know, taking him under his wing and, his sinker changeup combo was, with the eye test, it looks
Mm-hmm.
disgusting. It's gross.
Yeah.
And he'd go on, 3 game stretches where, hey, that's 6 innings, 6 Ks, a couple runs, 4 or 5 hits, and he'd put together strings of games like that, and you'd be like, hey, he's here, he's here. But then he'd get tagged. He'd get tagged a couple games in a row, and it would be a little inconsistent. But overall, I think that Bayo being a four, in our rotation, a 4 or 5, depending on if, Oviedo, Toll,
Mm-hmm.
early can, you know, just, outpitch him, outplay him. He's a very, very good four. And I think that, you know, to answer your question, I was a little up in the air about it. If obviously we had a good return
Yeah.
of MLB players, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
want to ship Bayo out for, some prospects. But if there was a very good return, position player wise, you know, top end closer, that you could put behind Chapman even before we had Chapman. Um, I'd want to do that, but overall, I think we made the right choice to kind of keep him, and um, I think right now he's a great number four.
Yeah. I mean, I think four is a great spot for him, or just really not. I was really afraid when Prez was talking about like, oh, we need a solid number two, that like we'd end up settling for, oh, Bayo can be a number two. Like I was like, oh god, that's the worst case scenario because I don't think he can handle that pressure. But I trading him, I think I've been like, that's kind of crazy given the contract, like given it's such a team friendly deal that like there's no losing really. I think to kind of continuing to work on him or change up what, like I think it's just like if he was still an ARB or whatever, like, or he's still on minimum, but it's like we got him for so long on such a friendly deal that like there's it's like I believe there would be a workable angle somewhere within there within what he can do. Maybe
Yeah,
as a reliever, I don't know. But I will say um when I was when I think Gabby Starr from the Boston, which Boston paper is that? Whatever. One of the beat
Harold.
Red Sox writers, when
Yeah.
she tweeted that, Bayo's got a curveball now, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Because I really do think, like, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
adding that to the mix is, I think, really, really valuable for him.
Yeah.
I also think, he and this is true. I mean, for a lot of the guys in our rotation, they're all like to a degree they're ground ballers, and we've been hurt by a shoddy infield. And I'm really curious, like how does Bayo do with just a competent infield behind him? I have to imagine that he's
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think that having all these options, right? I know you're
Mm-hmm.
joking about IKF, but having all these infield options and really, you know, utilizing them late in games and utilizing them, you know, for our pitchers, right? Like Suarez, big ground ball guy, Bayo, ground ball guy, even Sonny Gray, has
Mm-hmm.
shown that,
I
he does
forgot that
strike some
guy.
guys out, right?
Yeah.
You know what he does, but we have a lot of ground ball guys, and I think that our lineup, I think what you're going to see this year with Cora is our lineup is going to be the best lineup behind a specific pitcher, if that makes sense. Obviously, you
Mm.
want to have the hottest bats in there, but say there's a few guys that are kind of playing the same, either shitty or great, but you're
Mm-hmm.
going to find that Cora is going to use some of the best defensive guys with a staff like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, having a competent infield behind him, Bayo and the rest of our guys is going to be a big difference maker this year for sure.
Um.
I just don't want to see Campbell out there making plays. I want to
Yeah.
see him
So,
DH.
all right. Okay. So I got,
Never
I
mind.
think,
We don't need to talk about him.
three. So we don't have a ton of time left. In fact, I think we have like less than 10 minutes. But I have three rapid fire questions. Where does Masataka Yoshida fit into this lineup? Is the first one.
Nowhere. We should get rid of him. I I'm sorry.
Yeah.
People were saying when we signed him, oh, he could be Shohei Ohtani. There were
No.
articles about that. You could look them up. And I knew for a fact, played no defense. I don't think he's eclipsed one more in any season ever. He had a solid season one year,
Yeah. I
but
think
he
his
didn't
first year
even
was solid.
pass one more. And, you can say what you want about WAR, but that is value when we're talking about. I use F4, listen to Effectively Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out that podcast, great podcast. Um, yeah, to keep it short,
Yeah.
he really should be on the White Sox playing 150 to 160 games, and he'll probably get one more there. So,
Yeah. I don't think he's a bad player at all. I just think he's not for this roster. Um.
yeah,
Second question. Uh. Is sorry. Second question. Who has the better rotation, the Red Sox or the Tigers?
Red Sox. I'd say the Red Sox. I think it was still the Red Sox before we got Suarez. Maybe not.
Hmm.
But we were three or four. I think Tigers are second right now, and then the Dodgers. But I'd go us. I'd go us for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, Scooble, I guess, yeah, he carries that rotation, but we have too much firepower. And I think that I'm gonna go with the Sox.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing to add to that. Yeah, the Sox. I mean, the adding Framber definitely made the Tigers rotation scarier to me. Um,
Yeah,
but they just don't have the depth that we do. Like I truthfully like if Oviedo like didn't cut it, if Bayo didn't even cut it, it's like
yeah,
okay, well I got like Connolly early, I got Peyton Tolley, I got Patrick Sandoval is still on this team, Cutter Crawford's back, maybe I don't know where Hauk's gonna be in terms of his rehab. I don't think he's making it this year, but um, like Jake Bennett. Like I'm so like the last thing I'm worried about is like do we have enough arms?
yeah. No, no, I agree with that. And, I'm happy we shipped off, Kyle Harrison and, a bunch of other guys. I think Fitz, I was a big fan of Fitz.
Me
I
too.
thought that, he got screwed over. Richard Fitz, pitched really well today
Yeah.
for the Cardinals in the spring game. I know you spring game, but whatever. Yeah, I think I've never been a big fan of Frammer, Valdez. I think that
Yeah.
Suarez is a better version of him. Um,
Yeah, the whole
you
thing
know,
with Framber and the crossing up his catcher
the
last
catcher
season
cross up.
really rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, you're That's
Gets
such
on
a
his
bummer.
defense for not making plays. I think that he
Yeah.
has 2 good years left,
Mm.
Valdez, and I think that Suarez has the profile to, go 4 or 5 more years. So, you see it,
Yeah.
especially with Gray, Sonny Gray too, and Bayo. I think I'm, you know, gonna lean the Sox for sure.
Um, all right, two questions in one here. I think this will be our last one. Um, do the Red Sox win more games than they did last year? And what is their ceiling?
And what is their what?
Ceiling.
Okay. Won 89 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we're gonna be right around there, but I'm gonna go above. I think we're gonna win 91 games this year. I think we are going to be right in the thick of it. When you look at the projected AL East right now, you're looking at, the Rays projected 78 wins, and then from the Orioles, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Yankees, they're all projected within 2.5 games of each other. So the Orioles made a jump. That could, play a factor. We beat up on them last year, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken, beat up on the Yankees as well. But I think it'll be a little closer when it comes down to those series. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we were at 88, right? But I think that we have, that rotation along with a solid lineup and having that, you know, backdoor runner, whatever you want to call it in poker, having
Mm-hmm.
that, trade deadline, possibility to go get, a big bat or something like that to kind of put in our lineup, uh, for a run in the playoffs is, um, you know, right in the back door. So yeah, I'm gonna go with 91 wins. We're gonna go with over because of this staff, honestly. And I think Crochet takes a jump. I think Crochet, I agree with you with the 300 plus strikeouts take on
Yeah.
your
I
subject.
dude, I love him. He's so nasty. I so
Oh,
yeah, I agree about 90 some like the kind of like low 90s wins. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I think if the Blue Jays weren't the Blue Jays right now, I would argue that the Red Sox have a very good shot at the division. And I'm very
mhm.
biased in this, and you've probably also heard or seen this take of mine. I'm selling, I mean, like shocker. I'm sure I'm selling low on the Yankees, but like I really do think I don't see them as a threat, really.
Yeah. It
Like
really depends on how their staff comes back middle of the year for sure. I think
yeah,
that's the dependent.
truly. And I
And,
mean, I'm just like I'm just skeptical of Garrett Cole at that age coming back from Tommy John the same. It's also just it's an
yeah.
older team. They strike out a lot.
And God forbid Judge gets hurt or misses a month or two.
Yeah.
That isn't what you want, but that that could be bad. But yeah, I think the Yankees are always in it. I
Yeah.
think they do have a fine, lineup around Judge. I think if you take Judge away, that lineup is, middle of the pack. When you're talking about Jazz, um, when you're talking about Cody Bellinger, you got, if Stanton is healthy, right? You're looking at a solid lineup, but I'd lean towards their finishing more towards the 3-4 in the
Yeah.
division. So yeah,
I think it's
totally
just,
agree with that.
folks are like, "Oh, they run it back and the team was good last year." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, they're running it back, but like they're a year older." Like and I just,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot of like I think age is a really big thing now in terms of like players' health and you know I don't know if they're more fragile than they used to be, but um that is something where I'm like this
yeah.
team feels very old and that's never really a good thing.
The aging curve. Yeah, it's not like it used to be, but Verlander and Scherzer are showing that they still got it.
Dude, I
They're
love that
still
he's back in
playing.
Detroit. I think that's so cool. Um
Who would have
but yeah,
thought that that old Tiger staff, right? That they would out career Rick Porcello. Rick Porcello, you're thinking, oh, he has the profile to pitch 20 years, but no, not even
dude.
close. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, Harry, thank you so much for jumping on here. It was great talking socks with you.
Yeah.
Best of luck in the
Thanks, Bennett.
Frontier League.
Thank you. gonna be in New York, so probably won't catch a Yankees game there.
Yeah. No. All right, man. Have a good one.
All right.
So that was my conversation with Harry Kaplan. Before we go, just a reminder to all the things where you can find us. Instagram at Not From Boston. Substack is notfromboston.substack.com. Patreon.com/ Not From Boston. And as always, you can listen to us wherever you get your pods. So, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. And yeah, remember, we're going to be bi-weekly, so not next week, but the week after, which I'm just now realizing is like the week I leave for spring break. So we'll figure it out, guys, I promise. All right. Yeah. Bye.